Good evening. My name is Cheryl Hamilton. I am the director of Suitcase Stories. Suitcase Stories is a signature program of the International Institute of New England. Our program raises the profile of refugee and immigrant voices and fosters welcoming, inclusive communities through the powerful art of storytelling. For those of you who are new to the International Institute of New England, we are a 102-year-old organization that's been welcoming and assisting refugees and immigrants in our Greater Boston, Lowell, Massachusetts, and Southern New Hampshire offices. We provide a range of services, all of which our guest tonight can talk about because he actually came through all the services. We provide refugee resettlement, we assist in English programs, job skills training, employment counseling, and legal services, in addition to our Suitcase Stories program. We launched these conversations at the beginning of March when many of us, like all of you, were finding ourselves at home as an opportunity to get to know our storytellers more. And so I'm very glad to have Alexis Kubana with us this evening. Alexis and I were just discussing that he and I met a mere 6 months after he arrived in the United States. He was referred to me as someone who might have a great story to share, and we connected in Lynn at a little coffee shop, and so began our friendship and our work together as colleagues, because now Kubana is a skills training manager. Is that your title?
Yes.
At the Institute. So can you describe what your job is, just so people understand? My job is running Suitcase Stories. What do you do at the Institute?
So my job is helping people to identify their skills, training them for a short period of time, like 2 weeks and a half or 3 weeks, and then getting them jobs in the hospitals or in the hotels. Yeah.
That's great. And we're going to talk about that more, but I don't think everybody who's online tonight had the opportunity to join us 2 weeks ago when we had our annual World Refugee Day event. But during that event, we featured 3 Suitcase stories, one from each year. And we selected your story that was performed last year as one of the feature pieces. And again, that's because you were actually resettled through the International Institute of New England, but also now you work with us. Can you give people the brief version of that story that's captured in that piece that they could watch on our website later if they like?
Yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl. My story starts when I'm 13 years old with my 3 young siblings. We are at the hospital in Uganda, Kampala. It's a public hospital. It is large, it is crowded. My mom is dying because of being tortured with the rebels. And after a short while, after like a month, she passes away. I remember standing at the graveyard thinking about what I'm going to do with my 3 siblings and wondering what the future holds for me. We struggled a little bit and God well wishes to pay us for tuition to go to school in primary schools, in the secondary school, because in Uganda you have to pay to go to school. But I did not complete university due to fundings, and I had also to stop so that I can help my young siblings also to complete at least high school. Later on, I joined an organization that was helping refugees, and I worked with them as a trainer in computer and also helping with community service. Yeah, that's my story. Yeah.
That is a fast version of what is a remarkable journey. So you were born in Rwanda, first displaced to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which at the time was safer than Rwanda, but then displaced again to Uganda. How old were you when you first left Rwanda?
I was around 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it happened. Yeah.
And when did you arrive in Uganda?
I arrived in Uganda when I was around 10.
And you ended up spending
around 13, yeah.
Right, because that's when your mother passed away, which of course
yes.
we talked about, and I'm very sorry, which then put you in this unbelievable role of being the parent, and still are. I mean, your brothers are with you in Boston,
yes.
But I know you never stopped being a parent. Tell me what that was like in Uganda. That's incredible stress for a child at 13. Like, what did that look like?
First of all, in Uganda, when you arrive and you're from a French-speaking country, you don't know how to speak English, you don't know how to speak their local languages. it's really hard at the beginning, but it's a country which is really has good freedom, and they are friendly. You get to know people, you get to move around, and you are free to work, you are free to do everything that you need. That's so that you can survive. So I remember we really struggled a lot. I remember carrying bricks for building and being paid $1 a day to go and feed my family and also be able to go to school. I remember being a conductor on a taxi, calling people to come in a taxi, then giving me cents to survive. It was a hard journey, but worth it because we lucky enough we survived and were resettled 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about in your story how about 50% of refugees in the world actually live in refugee camps. The rest of the populations are much like yourself, right? Who lived in urban areas, just doing whatever they could to survive. I actually worked in Nairobi, Kenya, with many refugees from Uganda and DRC and the same regions, and I saw young children, which would have been your age, living on the streets and also carrying bricks and doing whatever they could to survive. You were fortunate because you had some people reach out and help you with a little bit with some of the school fees. Is that how you were able to go to school?
Yeah, I had a friend which has helped me to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
and that was only up to high school. So after high school, I had to survive and had to make money to join university, which I completed only 2 years and led it so that my siblings can also complete high school. Yeah.
Right. And yet what is remarkable, and now that I know you well, I'm not surprised, but while you're trying to take care of your family, while you're trying to go to school, also find whatever work you could to pay the rent you were able to get when you could have housing, you also volunteered to help refugees. And that's the work that actually brought you into the camps. Was that the first time for you going into a refugee camp, or were you in a camp when you were in the Democratic Republic of Congo?
So in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I was in a camp, but when I came to Uganda, I was lucky enough to be in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So they call us urban refugees. But while working with the organization, I had the opportunity to go back to the refugee camps. And that's where, actually in the western part of Uganda, in Wamwanja refugee camp. And I remember going there for around 6 hours and finding grass-thatched house, fire set up in different places, and seeing youth struggling in a center. And the following morning, and I'm asking them, "What are you guys doing? How are you?" They are idle. They are not. There is not really clear communication to them between them and the organizations. And since we were really youth, I was like, "Why don't you start up something to make sure that at least you can be able to communicate?" Because it reminded me when I was struggling, and by the time I arrived in Uganda. So they were good enough. They were good friends. Together, I volunteered to train them so that they can train others. So I helped them to learn English, and I helped them to start up a small organization that can help them to gain skills and earn a living out of it. Yeah, become self-sufficient and reliant.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point, that the collective language often spoke amongst the humanitarians and the UNHCR and the providers is English, right? Or French, depending on the region, but primarily English in these environments because people are coming around the world assisting, but that isn't necessarily the language the refugees speak. And so it creates this disconnect. I saw that in the camps that I worked with in Kenya as well, that it by its very nature alienates people from the participation in their own sort of survival, right? So I think the fact that you created that bridge is just unbelievable. And it's yet the bridge you continue to do now with us. You help refugees navigate systems here. But before we talk about your work here, I know you've been in touch with people since COVID-19 has affected the world. What are you hearing from people in the camps or in Kampala?
So right now, it is in Uganda, generally it is still in lockdown because of pandemic, and most especially refugees in the camp, they are really struggling a lot. So the UNHCR, Red Cross, these people have gone away. They were diplomats, they are back in their countries, and there's no really help. There's no access to food. There's no access to information, like at least talking about the preventive measures of spreading COVID-19. So I've been in touch with them, trying to help them to make sure that at least they understand the right information, and also using my group to make sure that they go to different places preaching that information to make sure that they are good. But so far, things are not really easy for them. And I imagine if I was a refugee still in the camp or in the urban area, how would I have been, and what would I have been doing now? Yeah.
And you have family, though, still in Uganda. Are they safe
Yes.
and healthy?
Yeah. I have my two kids there in Uganda, in Kampala, and actually this COVID-19 also has helped me to be in touch with them a lot. I can now do assignment with them when they are at home, and video chat with them every day. So I feel like this COVID has been helping me to connect with them a lot, but also not only with my two beautiful daughters, but also with my brothers here. We didn't see each other for so long because of working different shifts. But now we cook together, we share meals, we play music, dance around, invite some few friends, practicing social distance, and have fun. Yeah.
Kubana, I'm not surprised to see that you're someone that's like, I can find the silver lining in this. But actually, I think a lot of us can relate to that part, right? As difficult as it's been, it has given us some space to reconnect with more deeply and more consistently. So I'm glad you've had that. And I'm mostly glad to hear that they're safe. I know that was a concern for you in the early days because there was no restrictions put in place yet. One of our viewers asked how they can support people in these environments. I know the organization you founded or affiliated with is called Tomorrow Youth.
Yes.
I also know that if you're from a international level, if you go to the UNHCR's websites, they also have links based on location that people might be able to find. So thank you for that question, and thanks to anybody who can help. Really anybody right now. There's a lot of need to go around. So let's talk though, you leave Uganda and you actually talk about it being in itself bittersweet. You had built up all these systems, you were helping a lot of people, but you still were not going to be able to be a legal citizen in Uganda because you were still on a refugee mandate. So you had been recommended or applied for resettlement, assumed you'd never be called, and suddenly you and your brothers are told that you're going. How was that feeling?
So to me, I had two different feelings because I had made another life in Uganda, and I dedicated I remember it was almost 9 years working with refugees and immigrants there and setting up some good thing for them, for us, all of us. And I was thinking, should I really leave? Should I really go? Or should I stay? But again, I remember I have my siblings who need better life, who needs a good future. And we have this expectation when we are refugees and we want to be resettled. We have this expectation whereby we think America is heaven or Europe is heaven. We see this big they call skyscrapers. Yeah. We see these big buildings, they are nice on the TV, and we think that's the life we are going here. Mm-hmm. So definitely I decided to come. It was a painful decision. Lucky enough, I came and I saw my brothers smiling. I saw they are now having jobs. One is at college, is studying. So it's really a good opportunity.
Yeah, we describe refugee resettlement as one of the only long-term durable solutions for refugees. Less than 1% of the world is offered refugee resettlement as an option. So it's remarkable whenever I meet someone like yourself that you made it through that 1%. But if you weren't, the average time that someone spends as a refugee today is 17 to 20 years, if not longer. And so you would have been in a vulnerable situation. So I can only imagine that all those feelings, right? But here's what amazes me, Kubana, although I don't know if it should now that I know you well. You're at the airport, you've just arrived, I'm sure you're exhausted. You've got 3 younger brothers who are also exhausted and excited. And you're telling our staff who you've just met that you would love to work for us someday. I mean, you are like hitting the streets already networking.
Yeah, because I wanted to change the perception of how we think. People come here they're smart, they went to schools, they have degrees, they are lawyers, they are doctors. But when you come, it definitely, automatically, your mind shuts down. I didn't want to allow my mind to shut down. I wanted to continue the work that I was doing. One, to make sure that I inspire my fellow refugees in the United States so that they can be able to become the new leaders and also lead this amazing organization and continue doing their work that they have been doing, but also to give back to the community, to make an impact. I came in a terrible situation whereby the government has changed. They have elected a new leader. The new leader does not like immigrants and refugees. And I was like, what should I do? I should inspire people, and I should also show that we have a huge contribution to this nation. So that's what is inspiring me to continue. And also, I remember they were like, Alex, we know we can give you these jobs and everything. I was like, my goal is to work with you. And I'm glad I made
I just, I feel like it's appropriate that the job you did end up getting with us is a specialist in how to secure jobs. I mean, you help our clients navigate the employment system in the United States. And it just makes complete sense to me, because from the moment you arrived, it was part of your mission. So tell us, so in your role now, you're a skills training specialist. What does that look like now that we're remote? I mean, it used to be you're in the classrooms, you're standing in front of the chalkboard, you're teaching a variety of immigrants from all kinds of countries how to get jobs. What are you doing now?
So that's a good question. Thank you so much. So right after pandemic, remember there are refugee new arrivals who are coming in the country. So I imagine myself when I came and I was wondering what's going on. And I imagine someone comes after a week or a month, everything is shut down.
Yep.
So I worked closely with the education team. I was really lucky enough. They accepted me to work with them to make sure that I have this distance conversation, virtual conversation, and make sure that they feel safe, they get what they need. If it is to apply for food stamp, if it is to navigate the area, where do they go to the park, how often, if there is maybe a curfew, what time does the curfew start? So I was really also lucky enough to connect with some of the refugees, the new arrivals, and also immigrants, but also I continued helping people to apply for unemployment. I continued helping people to connect to basically navigate this life, but also virtually, because we couldn't meet each other. And also I was able, in my community in Lynn, we do have a lot of people from East Africa and Central Africa who came as refugees, and most of them, I would say, they are over 50 years old. So I was in touch basically with such age group to make sure that they are safe and they are getting access to everything that they need. They are getting access to food. They know how to apply for everything. And also, I also helped others to learn computer online, to learn English again. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, we were talking in the beginning of the pandemic about how many people we were re-enrolling that used to be involved in our services, because we were doing wellness checks on families to make sure that they were safe, to tell them they could come back for services for employment if they had lost their job. I hadn't even got to the part where the newest people, I mean, you reminded me, it wasn't just these long terms. There were people literally getting off the airports weeks going into this. How are they doing generally? I mean, even emotionally, how are they feeling? I'm sure you're still in touch.
Yeah, it's complicated for everyone. It's really complicated. Yep. You automatically become depressed. But I think one of the solutions that people are really getting is to talk to their families as much as they can, to connect, and also to talk about it in general, to see. Yep. But now you see, after pandemic, then another thing comes of your race, your color, your...
Yep, I was just going to say...
Your security, you don't know whether you are safe, but also I always advise my people, more especially people who are not yet, who are still permanent, who are still on employment, to be careful, because right now I would want to go and protest, but I don't know what that means in the case of my status here. So yeah, I wish I was a citizen and be able to be involved in such situations, but now I cannot.
Right, there's a worry to your own legal, or threats, or potentially you feel like there'd be a threat to your legal. You actually just brought up a topic someone on the webinar has raised. Gillian says, I wonder if that heaven image that you described that many immigrants have before they get there is still intact in places like Uganda, or if the recent protests have affected their perceptions, or frankly, even the people you were talking about. I mean, I cannot imagine, first you're at home, you don't know about a pandemic, and now there's protests rightfully erupting all around you and what that means.
So they don't still consider it as heaven or paradise. I'm sorry to say like that, because also one of my missions is to tell the people reality. We come here, we pose on good, nice cars, nice houses, yet they are not our own. Yet you are sleeping in a tiny room, maybe sometimes with two people in your room. So what I really tell my people is that what you think about America is not how it is, but you can work hard and achieve whatever you want. Right now, they are really so scared about what is happening, and they don't know the solution to it. So they are not really considering it as paradise or heaven. But also it's still a good opportunity to come here, go to good school, be able to go to school, be able to work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know our team has been spending a lot of time talking about this internally as well. We've been having conversations with our clients, trying to, I mean, it's hard to say you can explain what's happening related to movements like the Black Lives Matter, but talking about how it impacts them and their questions. I mean, we've had people just generally asking, because they're so new to the United States, what is the history behind this? And you can imagine our staff trying to, like, how do we articulate all of this when it also is affecting our staff as staff, right? So I think your term complicated is probably the best description of where we are right now. An intersection between wanting to be both out and having to stay home, wanting to be able to be secure in our livelihoods, in our health. Well, it's complicated, not just for us, for everybody, right? It is a complicated time. It's just that our clients are most vulnerable because of the jobs that they have or the jobs that they don't have. We know this week we had a number of people laid off because more hotels are not seeing, of course, the expectation of attendance or guests as they expected. So I'm really grateful for the work that you do. I'm really,
thank you.
Really grateful that you are there. It made me think on I don't know if to say it's related, but the stereotypes go both ways, right? I'm from Maine, and growing up, the stereotype of Africa was not great, right? It was either portrayed in movies as violent, or everyone's in a grass thatch house, I'm afraid to say. Like, that was sort of the extremes that we were presented. Yes. And I know that when I started traveling to Kenya and to Togo and Ghana, my mother would ask me lots of questions because she had no context. She was from a small town in Maine too, and she was sort of embarrassed to ask me. So I actually would send her photographs of skyscrapers and of grocery stores and of Starbucks. And you know, we just have to do a better job sharing stories and the realities of what life is internationally and where people are and what they're dealing with. Which brings me to my favorite subject to end on, which is storytelling. I still can't get over the fact that not only did you get a job within a year with us, but within a few months you were like, sure, I'll tell my story. You said that was because storytelling was always important to you. It's something you see that has value. What is it for you that makes it important?
Yeah, like I said, it's something that has value and important. And I believe that when you share your story, once you share your story, people don't go the same as they came. So I can come to listen to your story, thinking that maybe it is any else. Everyone has got a story to tell. And I believe you can learn from stories.
What did you learn about yourself through crafting this particular piece that you told, and also just getting on stage and telling it to a whole new audience of Americans who did not know you?
Exactly. So what I learned is that I really got the audience that would really listen and understand. I made friends. I have a friend whereby I go every it is in the Thanksgiving, yeah. Zifra, whereby she was telling her story about her name, how she used to be called Susanna and everything. And when I came here, people were calling me Alexis. But I remember from all my childhood, everyone was calling me Kubana. And I told her, after telling the story, I told her, you know what? From today, I'm changing. I'm called Kubana. Why should I be given? I don't know what Alex means, or Alexis, but I know what Kubana means. It means to be social, to be polite, and to be understanding. So, and I feel proud to be called such a name instead of being called Alex, that I don't know where it comes from.
Your name means to be social and understanding?
Yes.
Of course it is. It's like just so perfect. It sums up you. Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories I tell often is the friendship you and Schiffer Burke founded after performing together. It was both your first times ever performing on stage and ever telling your story. And it was a beautiful moment that articulates why we do Suitcase Stories. It's as important to hear people's stories as it is to see these relationships foster. I mean, one could say that a daughter of two Holocaust survivors, you know, an older lady befriending a Rwandan refugee, like doesn't seem like an obvious connection, but it's just people, right? You both are just people and you've shared. I know you've gone to dinners together, and I know she just has so much respect and admiration for you as well, and the work that you do, and is a supporter of ours as well, which has been great.
Yeah.
Do you have other stories in your back pocket you think you might be telling about what life has been in the United States since you've gotten here?
Like I said, everyone has a story to tell. I think if I continue to tell a story, I would tell a story of my life in America.
What's one of the highlights you might share?
They are not really good to
Oh
share.
no.
It's also like I never expected it to be the same, like in general. And difficulty is meeting a police when you are while driving and stopping you. There are a lot of difficulties that you're passing, but also I believe like if you really dedicate your life to what you really want and have a goal, you can achieve everything. So I'm lucky enough that I have achieved to work with a great organization like International Institute of New England. I'm able to help people to get jobs in America. Sometimes people ask me, what do you do? I help people to get jobs. You from Africa,
I know.
they're helping other people from America to get jobs. Yeah, why not? You can also do it. So yeah, that's
Well,
what.
and actually, in my opinion, and this has actually been what I've worked in most, is refugee employment, is that you have a better lens about how that goes and what needs to, like all the steps involved than I would have, right? Because you've been on the having to walk those steps, but also you understand the networks in a much different way. I often say that I feel like our clients should be teaching like financial literacy classes, because if they can manage the finances that they have coming into this country, which are so limited as a refugee, and somehow surviving those first 6 months, 1 year. I mean, we certainly support people and help them get ahead, but it is such the wherewithal and the tenacity that people like yourselves and our clients demonstrate every day that at least keeps me motivated and inspired. But I also appreciate your candor. It is not easy. And this is some of the hardest times we have been in. And I really hope for everybody it gets easier in the weeks and months to come. Kubana, I get to the pleasure of speaking to you always as colleagues, but I want to thank everybody who signed on tonight for having the chance to get to know you too. And I hope you tell us that American story soon on another stage.
It's coming soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Kubana. So thank you everyone for joining us. I have a couple announcements before we go. The first is that now that it's summertime, we're actually going to be shifting these conversations to noon on Wednesdays. We know people are out and about biking in the evening, hopefully socially distanced. So look for those announcements. Next week, we actually have Emma Tobin. She told a story 2 years ago about her work in Southeast Asia, but she is also our Director of Strategic Partnerships. She's been our Lowell site director for the last few years. She's recently expanded her role and is going to be telling us about all the important things that the Institute is doing right now. So we will follow up with that announcement shortly. You can also see it on Facebook. You can also join our Suitcase Stories Circle. This is a membership subscription where you get access to all the Suitcase Story videos, as well as additional resources, special updates, special events. And so if you'd like to do that, you can go to suitcasestories.org and click on Circle at the top. But we mostly just appreciate you tuning in tonight and being a continued supporter of the Institute and the work that we try to do every day. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.